June 1, 2024. Indiana Fever vs. Chicago Sky. The WNBA is in the middle of its biggest moment in decades. Viewership up nearly 87%, a rookie named Caitlin Clark pulling in fans who'd never watched a women's basketball game in their lives. The energy inside that arena is electric, the kind you could actually feel through a screen. And then, with no play developing, no ball in motion, no basketball reason whatsoever, Chennedy Carter walks up and drives her shoulder straight into Clark's back, sending her to the floor. No contest for the ball. No defensive play. Nothing you could point to and call basketball. Carter doesn't check on her. Doesn't even break stride. She just walks away like what just happened was completely routine. The arena goes dead silent. Replays hit from every angle within seconds, and every single one of them shows the same thing. That's the moment. That's where this whole story starts, and where Chennedy Carter's world began to unravel in ways that went far deeper than one flagrant foul on a Saturday night. What made that moment hit differently wasn't just the physical contact. It was everything that came with it. Clark got up off the floor, composed, didn't engage, didn't escalate. She pulled her focus straight back to the game like she hadn't just been knocked down in front of thousands of people and a national television audience. Carter, meanwhile, kept walking. No reaction, no acknowledgement, no pause. Just gone, like she'd done nothing worth stopping for. That contrast, one player ice-cold and locked in, the other completely unbothered in the worst possible way, hit harder than the shove itself. Analysts calling the game live didn't hesitate. They said it looked deliberate. Nothing about it resembled a defensive play that went too far or a physical battle for position. It was an off-ball hit from behind, clean and calculated. And the crowd felt it before the replays even finished loading. Social media didn't wait for an official ruling either. Clips were everywhere within minutes. Not just WNBA fans. People who'd never followed women's basketball a day in their lives were watching the replay on loop, sharing it, reacting to it. League officials saw it. Sponsors saw it. The entire sports world saw it. And somewhere behind all that noise, behind the viral clips and the outrage and the debate, decisions were already being made. Because when a moment gets that big, that fast, the response has to match it. The WNBA reviewed the play the following day and upgraded it from a common foul, how it was originally called on the floor, to a flagrant one. Chicago Sky coach Teresa Weatherspoon released a statement saying Carter got caught up in the heat of the moment, and that the two had spoken about it privately. Clean, measured, controlled. The kind of response organizations are trained to give when they're trying to contain something before it grows. But the league's official response wasn't what did the real damage. It wasn't the flagrant one upgrade. It wasn't Weatherspoon's carefully worded statement. What truly shifted the narrative, what turned a bad moment into something career-defining, was what Chennedy Carter did next. She went to social media. Instead of going quiet, instead of letting the moment breathe, she was posting. No apology, no context, just noise at the absolute worst time. And then came the press conference, where she addressed the whole thing with a dismissiveness that genuinely caught people off guard. The message, boiled right down, it's just basketball, move on. No accountability. No acknowledgement of what every replay was showing millions of people. Reporters noticed. Analysts noticed. Fans noticed. Because by that point, it wasn't even about the shove anymore. It was about how she chose to handle the fallout. And for a lot of people watching, that press conference was the exact moment the story around Chennedy Carter stopped being complicated and started feeling very, very clear. Here's where it gets deeper though. Because none of what happened that night existed in isolation. The shove was the loudest moment, the one that broke through to every corner of the internet. But the pattern it fit into had been building for years, across multiple cities, multiple organizations, multiple chances. And anyone who'd been paying close attention already knew the warning signs were there long before June 2024. Carter was selected 4th overall in the 2020 WNBA draft by the Atlanta Dream. Her rookie season was genuinely electric. She became the youngest player in WNBA history to score 30 points in a game at just 21 years old, finished second in Rookie of the Year voting, and had people in the league genuinely excited about what she could become. The talent was never in question. It was never the problem. Then came 2021. During a game against the Las Vegas Aces, teammate Courtney Williams approached Carter on the bench. Not to argue, just to encourage her to get more engaged, cheer for her teammates, be present. An argument broke out anyway. Carter checked out after the first quarter and spent the entire second half sitting in the locker room while her team played without her. After the game, she confronted Williams over playing time, and sources reported she made it clear she wanted to fight her own teammate. Williams walked away and shut it down, but the locker room had already seen more than enough. The Atlanta Dream suspended Carter indefinitely for conduct detrimental to the team. And what made it worse? Sources told reporters at the time that this wasn't a one-off. The friction had been building since her very first season. This was just the moment it finally spilled into public view. If you've been finding this story as wild as it actually is, you'll want to stick around, because it gets significantly more complicated from here. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time, because this is exactly the kind of story we dig into every week. Atlanta traded her to the Los Angeles Sparks. Fresh start, new organization, clean slate, that was the idea. It didn't hold. The Sparks benched her during the 2022 season for what the Los Angeles Times reported as poor conduct. The specific details stayed behind closed doors, but the outcome was public enough. The Sparks exercised her fourth-year option, then waived her before the 2023 season even started. She didn't play a single WNBA game in 2023. The league that had drafted her in the top 4, that had watched her break records as a 21-year-old, had effectively run out of patience. She landed in China instead. And this is the part that makes the whole situation genuinely maddening depending on how you look at it. Because overseas, away from the drama and the locker room friction and the spotlight, Chennedy Carter averaged 32 points per game and won Player of the Year. 32. The talent hadn't gone anywhere. It never left. It was sitting right there, lighting up leagues on the other side of the world while her WNBA future looked increasingly uncertain. Then came the Chicago Sky opportunity in 2024 under coach Teresa Weatherspoon, and for a while it genuinely looked like something had shifted. She led the Sky in scoring at 17.5 points per game. She and Angel Reese built what looked like real chemistry, on and off the court. The team had legitimate playoff energy in the early part of the season. People who'd written Carter off started quietly reconsidering. Maybe the overseas years had given her perspective. Maybe the fresh environment was exactly what she needed. Then June 1st happened, and everything that had been quietly rebuilding came apart faster than it had ever come together. After the season ended, the Chicago Sky chose not to extend Carter a qualifying offer. She became an unrestricted free agent. That part alone wasn't shocking. Teams make those decisions all the time, and given everything that had happened, it wasn't exactly a surprise. What came next was all 13 WNBA teams passed. Not one offer. Not one training camp invite. Not one phone call that turned into anything. For a player who had just led her team in scoring, averaged 17.5 points a game on a playoff contending roster, and had been putting up 32 points a night in one of the most competitive overseas leagues in the world the winter before. The entire league, collectively, said no. And the WNBA never released a formal statement about it. No ban, no policy, no explanation. Just silence. Loud. Coordinated. Impossible to misread silence. She signed with Adelitas da Chihuahua in Mexico's top professional league. And while Carter was playing in Mexico, the Chicago Sky, the team that had chosen not to bring her back, stumbled to one of their worst records in recent memory, finishing 10-34. Fans on social media started doing the math out loud. The team desperately needed guards scoring all season long, and the guard who'd led them in scoring the year before was sitting unsigned while teams grabbed players off waivers trying to fill the gap. The debate that had been simmering since June 2024 finally boiled all the way over. Was this accountability? Or was this something closer to erasure? The silence from her former teammates made it feel even heavier. Nobody from the Sky stepped up publicly to defend her. In a league that prides itself on visible solidarity, that kind of quiet is never actually neutral. It's a message. And Angel Reese, the teammate Carter had been photographed with, laughed with, built genuine on-court chemistry with, quietly unfollowed her across every social media platform with no explanation. No post, no statement. Just gone. In today's sports landscape, those small digital moves get analyzed like press conferences. It told the entire league exactly where things stood without a single word being spoken out loud. 500 days would pass before Chennedy Carter stepped back onto a WNBA floor. And almost nobody saw what happened next coming. April 15, 2026. The Las Vegas Aces, reigning WNBA champions, one of the most respected and successful organizations the league has ever seen, announced they had signed Chennedy Carter to a training camp contract. Not a sympathy signing. Not a desperate move from a rebuilding team with nothing to lose. The defending champions, built around MVP Aya Wilson, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young and Jewel Lloyd, decided Chennedy Carter was worth the risk. Coach Becky Hammon didn't dance around it either. She said Carter was in a great frame of mind, that she'd just been cooking people overseas and that Las Vegas wanted her to come bring that same energy to the WNBA. Hammon has a history of getting the best out of players who've struggled elsewhere, and Carter herself seemed to feel something different about this particular opportunity. She told reporters at Media Day that she'd always had a feeling this would happen eventually. For some reason, I felt like I've seen this coming, she said. I don't know if I've seen it coming now, but I felt like eventually, before my career was over, I'd be an ace. Just what Becky was telling me, how she felt about me as a player, as a person, it made me comfortable and confident to just say yes. Then she went out and made the league pay attention all over again, this time for exactly the right reasons. Preseason debut against the Japanese national team, with Aya Wilson sitting out. Carter dropped 18 points, grabbed 5 rebounds, dished 2 assists, and the Aces won comfortably. The WNBA's own official account posted her highlights with 2 words: bucket. Get her. Then came the regular season. Against the Los Angeles Sparks, the franchise that had waived her 4 years earlier, she came off the bench and put up 22 points on 9 of 13 shooting, finished with a plus 28 rating in just 19 minutes, and led the entire team in scoring. 3 days later against the Connecticut Sun, she went for 27. 3 games into her Aces career, and she was already the most talked-about bench player in the league. The betting markets reflected it. She entered the 2026 season as the favorite to win 6th Player of the Year at plus 500 odds. Former skeptics were suddenly very quiet. And after her preseason debut, when a reporter asked her what it felt like to be back, Carter paused and said it had been over 500 days since she'd been out there. You could feel exactly what those 500 days meant in the way she said it. So what does all of this actually add up to? Because it's genuinely one of the most complicated stories women's basketball has ever produced, and anyone who hands you a clean, simple answer is probably missing half of it. The talent was never the debate. It was never even close to the debate. Chennedy Carter has always been one of the most gifted scorers in the women's game. Explosive, physical, instinctive, the kind of player who can create a shot against any defense on any night. That was obvious from the moment she dropped 35 points as a 21-year-old rookie and made history doing it. What followed over the next 4 years wasn't a talent problem. It was everything surrounding the talent: the locker room friction in Atlanta, the conduct issues in Los Angeles, the dismissive press conference in 2024, the social media posts when silence would have served her infinitely better. The inability, repeatedly, to meet big moments with even a fragment of the accountability those moments required. And here's the thing about playing in the WNBA in 2024, at the exact moment the league's viewership exploded and Caitlin Clark became a mainstream sports story, there was no quiet way to move past anything anymore. Every clip lived online permanently. Every silence from a teammate got analyzed. Every post-game word got replayed. The same spotlight that was growing the league into something genuinely historic was also making sure there was nowhere to hide when things went wrong. Carter didn't just have a bad moment in front of a big crowd. She had a bad moment in front of the biggest audience women's basketball had ever had. And the response she gave afterward made sure it stuck. But then came Las Vegas. And 27 points off the bench. And the WNBA's own account posting her highlights. And a coach who believed in her enough to bring her onto a championship roster when every other organization had looked the other way for an entire calendar year. The story that looked like it was ending in Mexico quietly rewrote itself into something nobody predicted. Whether 2026 represents genuine growth, or simply a league that needed her talent badly enough to extend one more opportunity, that question probably doesn't have a clean answer yet. What's undeniable is that Chennedy Carter's career has refused to follow the script everyone wrote for it. Not the one that said she'd be a franchise cornerstone after that rookie season. Not the one that said the Clark incident had permanently closed every door. She's beaten both narratives, in completely opposite directions, and somehow ended up exactly where she always believed she'd be. On a contender, under bright lights, doing the one thing she has never once stopped being able to do. The real question now isn't whether she belongs. 3 games into the 2026 season, that answer is already obvious. The real question is whether this version of Chennedy Carter, the one who told reporters she felt at peace, the one Becky Hammon described as genuinely different, is here to stay. Because if she is, the Las Vegas Aces just got significantly more dangerous. And the most complicated comeback story in recent WNBA history might just have the ending nobody saw coming when that arena went silent on June 1, 2024. If this story hit differently than you expected, drop a comment below. Whether you think Carter deserves this second chance or the league gave in too easily, I want to hear exactly where you stand on it. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We cover the stories behind the stories every single week, the ones that go deeper than the highlights. Hit that subscribe button. Leave a like if this was worth your time, and we'll see you on the next one. But let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in this story. Because the question everyone kept asking when the Aces signed Carter wasn't whether she could score, that was never the debate. The question was whether she could exist inside one of the most established, tightly run locker rooms in the entire league without it falling apart. The Aces aren't a rebuilding project. They aren't a team desperate enough to absorb any kind of disruption just to get talent on the floor. They have Aya Wilson, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, and Jewel Lloyd. 4 players who have won championships together, who know exactly what this organization expects, and who have zero tolerance for anything that threatens what they've built. Bringing Chennedy Carter into that environment wasn't a leap of faith. It was a calculated decision with very clear conditions attached to it. And what happened inside that locker room matters more than any stat line. Because Aya Wilson, 4-time MVP, the most dominant player in the league, and someone who had a significant say in whether Carter even got signed, didn't just tolerate the move. She endorsed it. She spoke about Carter in training camp with genuine warmth, saying it had been a joy having her around and that the team was already pushing each other to grow. Wilson even acknowledged she'd been on the wrong side of Carter's scoring before, saying she was glad Carter would be burning other teams now instead of the Aces. That kind of public endorsement from the franchise player means something. It's not a press conference talking point. It's a signal to everyone watching that the locker room had already done the work before the cameras arrived. Carter herself seemed to feel the difference too. She described playing alongside Wilson and the rest of the Aces core as genuinely humbling, calling it an honor, saying they'd embraced her and made her feel comfortable in a way she hadn't always experienced. She also admitted it was super hard learning to play within the flow of an established system, to pick her spots, to let the game come to her instead of forcing it. That kind of self-awareness, stated publicly and without being prompted, is something you simply didn't hear from Chennedy Carter in 2021, or 2022, or at that press conference in 2024. Whether it's real growth or just the right words at the right time, only the full season will tell. But it's a version of Carter that the league hadn't seen before. And that alone makes 2026 genuinely fascinating to watch. There's a bigger conversation sitting underneath all of this though, and it's one the WNBA hasn't fully addressed out loud even as everyone in the league feels it. Because what happened to Chennedy Carter in 2025, the complete and total silence from every single organization in a 13-team league, raised a question that doesn't have a comfortable answer. Where exactly is the line between accountability and blackballing? And who gets to decide when that line has been crossed? The facts on paper created a genuine contradiction that fans and analysts spent the entire 2025 season wrestling with. Carter had just put up 17.5 points per game for a playoff contending roster. She had won Player of the Year in China, averaging 32 points a night. She was 26 years old, in the prime of her athletic career, and by every measurable standard one of the 15 or 20 most talented guards on the planet. And yet not one team, out of 13, made a single move to bring her in. Not even a minimum contract. Not even a training camp look. The math simply didn't add up on talent alone, which meant the decision was about something beyond basketball. And the league never once explained publicly what that something was. That silence from the WNBA itself became its own controversy. Supporters argued Carter had crossed a line that the league needed to hold firmly, that the Clark incident combined with years of documented locker room issues made her too high a risk for any organization to absorb. Critics pushed back hard, arguing that players with far worse documented behavior had received chances while Carter, whose actual on-court output remained elite, was being frozen out without a formal process, without a stated policy, and without any clear path back. The debate got loud and it got uncomfortable, touching on questions about how the league handles discipline, who gets protected, and whether the court of public opinion had effectively taken the place of any official ruling. None of those questions got clean answers in 2025. And the fact that the reigning champions were the ones who finally opened the door, quietly and without fanfare, suggested that the league itself had moved on without ever fully resolving what the episode actually meant. So here is where everything lands. And it's worth sitting with for a moment, because the full arc of this story, from that silent arena on June 1, 2024, to Chennedy Carter dropping 27 points off the bench for the reigning champions in 2026, is genuinely one of the most layered things the WNBA has ever produced. Not because of the shove. Not because of the flagrant one upgrade or the social media posts or the dismissive press conference. But because of everything the story reveals about what professional sports actually demands from the people inside it, and how brutal the gap between talent and sustainability can be when the two stop working together. Carter's career has essentially been a stress test of a question the sports world never stops arguing about. How much does character actually matter when the ability is undeniable? In Atlanta, the answer was, more than we initially thought. In Los Angeles, the answer was, enough to end things early. In Chicago, in front of the biggest audience women's basketball had ever seen, the answer was, everything. All of it. At once. Because the WNBA in 2024 was no longer a league where things quietly resolved themselves between organizations and players behind closed doors. It was a league under a national spotlight, with sponsors paying attention, with viewership records being broken, with every incident getting dissected on podcasts and social media within hours of happening. The margin for moments like June 1st had shrunk to almost nothing. And Carter found that out the hardest possible way. But here is the part that makes this story genuinely worth following through to the end. She came back anyway. Not to a team that needed a distressed asset badly enough to accept any risk. Not to a rebuilding organization with nothing to lose. She came back to the Las Vegas Aces, the most successful franchise in recent WNBA history, a team that could have filled that roster spot 17 different ways, because they believed the version of Chennedy Carter standing in front of them in April 2026 was worth a real chance. And through 11 regular season games, she has done nothing but make that belief look correct. The talent was always there. The question was always whether everything else could catch up to it. For the first time in her professional career, it genuinely looks like it might be. And if it does, if the Aces win another championship with Carter coming off that bench, if this version of her story holds together through a full season and a playoff run, then what started as the most damaging moment of her career will have become the turning point that finally forced everything else into place. That would be a remarkable ending. But in a story this complicated, remarkable endings are never guaranteed. They have to be earned. Every single night.